Rainy days don't seem so wet, stormy nights don't stay. From the moment that we met, you were worth the wait. Oh, this could be the best thing that I'll ever know. Talk for hours and never slept. Two silhouettes on the concrete steps. We watched the sun as it slowly crept from the horizon to the place we met. Oh, this could be the best thing that I'll ever know.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Todd Wilkinson, and I'm coming to you from snowy Bozeman, Montana, at the north end of the greater Yellowstone ecosystem. I'm a journalist and longtime friend of Tom Mangelsen. I've written for National Geographic and The Guardian and others, and I am founder of a new conservation journalism website called Yellowstonian.org. But most of all, I'm grateful to have collaborated with Tom on a couple of different books. And our intent tonight is for sure to mark the passing of Grizzly 399. We don't want to get too somber, but it's hard not to. This is really a holiday season of deep reflection, and that's what we want to do tonight. Grizzly 399 belonged to no one, but she's a part of our collective legacy and what we do for grizzly bears going forward, including many of her offspring. Tonight, we're going to have a conversation about 399 and where things are going. And with that, I would like to give a shout out to my friend, dear friend, Tom Mangelsen, who is at his Images of Nature gallery in Jackson, Wyoming. Hey, Tom.
Hey, Todd. Great to be here. Glad you're on the line here. And if it weren't for you, a lot of this wouldn't have happened with 399, the books and all the stories and podcasts and other things that we've done. A lot of book events. We went around on our first book, Grizzlies of Pilgrim Creek, all over Wyoming, Montana, and Idaho, and back east and back in the west, and Commonwealth in San Francisco. So we've been around a lot, trying to talk about grizzly bears, and it's all based on 399, your hard work and your writing and our collaboration with my photographs. So thanks for being here, and I thank everybody who's online. We're all 399 advocates and protectors and supporters, and I thank all of you for being here. I thank my Images of Nature team, the gallery team, the people in the office who help edit the pictures and keep me going. My office in Omaha for letting me be out there in the early days, maybe 125, 30, 40, 50 days a year, wondering what the heck I was doing with this bear. So thank you for their patience. Thanks to my assistant, Tiffany Talbot, and Sue Cedarholm for spending a lot of days out there with me, keeping me sane. So thanks everybody for being here. And Todd, good luck on your Yellowstonian.org website. Everybody should go there because Todd's a wonderful writer and he's got a lot of good stories. Thank you, Todd.
Thank you. So as we all know, a great photograph is not worth 1,000 words. It's worth tens of thousands, if not more. So Tom, it's your magic that carries the day, and has carried the day. One thing I want to note as we go into this discussion is to speak to her longevity and how important that was. Here we have a grizzly bear born during the Clinton-Gore years. She passed through 2 terms of the Bush-Cheney years, 2 terms of the Obama-Biden years, through 1 term of the Trump Pence years, and then through most of the years of Biden and Harris. And it's an incredibly long time. And I think all of us who are tuning in tonight, whether we had the great opportunity to see her, you saw her as much as anybody out there, Tom, and it's a testament. But she resonates with us. She's been a part of our life. We've waited for her in springtime, and many of you saw her, waited to get her into the den at the end of the day, or end of the season. I'll never forget that time. I had been out writing a story and had gone to her daybed in the year 2005 with Chuck Schwartz, never saw her. You caught a glimpse of her in 2006. 2007, everybody's seen her 3 cubs, and you and I stood overlooking Willow Flats, and there was quite a commotion that gathered with people out on the veranda of Jackson Lake Lodge looking out toward Mount Moran, and she was teaching those cubs how to hunt. And at that point, we thought, in a very vague sense of thinking about doing a couple of books, or at least 1 book. Tell me about that. Did you ever think that subsequently we would ever be able to do 1 book, let alone 2, when we got together that day in 2007?
Well, that was, like you said, it was a vague thought. We just realized very early on that Tree 99 was a, quote, roadside bear, and people had started loving her and seeing her, and she had her own Facebook page pretty much immediately. And I had no idea that we would ever see her more than, that first time I saw her in 2006. I thought that would be it, because there hadn't been any grizzly bears in Teton Park for almost 50 years. They'd been extirpated by hunters and poachers and some by the Park Service. And so I always kept thinking this would be the last year until maybe year 10 or something, that I thought, well, I started assuming she might come back, but I also knew in the back of my head that a lot of bears don't make it out of the den, especially cubs. And so it was pretty much down the road until we actually seriously thought about a book. And I never thought there would be enough information. I didn't think she'd probably live long enough to do 2 books. But after the first book, we realized 5 years later that she still had a lot of story to tell, which she has. So she's been a huge gift to both of us and to millions of people around the world, obviously. And she's given us a great story about grizzly bears, and that they're not man-eaters, they're not mean and dangerous. And so she opened the eyes to so many millions of people about her kind, other grizzly bears and black bears for that matter. And so it's been a real great 18, almost 19 years that she's given us. And I'm really glad for that. I wish it would have lasted a few more, which I was hoping for. But it's a dangerous world out there, and it's didn't happen for a few more, giving us another couple of years. But she had a long life and produced a lot of cubs, so I'm just grateful to her.
Could you maybe elaborate a little bit for viewers, some of whom have been to Grand Teton and others who are viewing from around the world tonight? of what she did to galvanize the human community around and creating a group of dedicated advocates for grizzly bears that really didn't exist as it came to exist with her. Talk about that a little bit.
Well, I'll go back to the fact that what I just said was that there weren't any grizzly bears for 50 years in Grand Teton, and there were only about 130 or so in the early 70s in all of the greater Yellowstone ecosystem. Unfortunately, in 1975, they were put on the threatened list of the Endangered Species Act to protect them. But I moved into Jackson, right on the edge of Teton Park near Moose, in 1978, and it would be not until 2006 when she arrived on the scene. So there's a big lag time. I had to go to Alaska or Canada to actually see bears, grizzly bears, brown bears. And I saw very few in Yellowstone. It was like seeing a whooping crane or something in Yellowstone even. But the fact that she just showed up with her 3 cubs in a way, and then she stuck around. So she was the first resident grizzly bear. We can't say that there weren't any grizzly bears walking through Teton Park to go someplace else or go back into Yellowstone, but she was the first one that stayed and hibernated and had a home range, which was fairly big, all the way from Coulter Bay to the elk refuge in those days. And then she expanded it further south later on, which we'll talk about in a minute. But she was just really tolerated people well, and she was able to navigate the human landscape that most bears hadn't done before, or even in Yellowstone, they weren't that accommodating to being seen and observed a long time. Sometimes you'd see them all day long. Sometimes it might be a brief sighting or observation, but she led us into her world kind of, and I think that's what was so special, that she was able to really live with humans, and most of us humans tried to live with her, and I think for the most part we have, with few exceptions. But I think just her longevity and the fact she had all those cubs, although half of them are probably gone, but she still had 18, 19 cubs, and still maybe 10 or 12 are still out there, hopefully, but we don't actually know.
We can't avoid this question. Bring us back to where you were in that time period of Tuesday, October 22nd of this year. And how did word reach you that she had been struck and killed?
Well, that morning, I got a text from a friend who said that there was rumors flying about 399 potentially being hit and killed. And the first rumor was that they were somewhere south of the visitor center, which is only a few miles north of my house. So my assistant Tiffany and I jumped in the car and went up there and looked for any signs of a bear that might have been killed or hurt, and there was none. And then we talked to the friend again. She said, "Oh, it's all rumor," and so I felt better about that. And then there was another rumor that there was a bear with 2 cubs down in the canyon that got hit. And I said, well, she only has 1 cub, so that's good news. Not that any bear should get hit, but I felt slightly better that it might not be her. But then we got another rumor that she was down. It was her down there, but it wasn't confirmed. So we went down there, looked all over for glass or fragments of a car. The car apparently had been severely damaged, and so I saw a little bit of, there's a red tape down there, which probably is where the accident was. It was it was near Astoria Hot Springs, so 30 miles south of town, 40 miles, 50 miles from my house. And we didn't see anything that morning, but when we got back into cell phone range, I got a call that said indeed it was her, and we just hadn't gone far enough. She was another 5 miles south of where we were looking. And I was devastated that she had been killed, obviously, knowing her for all these years, 19 years or so, and spending so much time with her as like a good friend or a family member, or maybe a, great dog that we've all probably had, or pet. But it was more than that. She was very special to me. I never had kids or anything, so I think I kind of attached to her and her offspring as part of my family, which is probably a mistake, but I did. So we started asking questions about what happened, and in 2021, she was in the same area at Astoria, and on a carcass, and the agencies, she'd been going through neighborhoods and stuff, but hadn't really caused any real trouble. She got into some beehives, honey, and you can't blame a bear for eating honey, for God's sake, and some compost piles that people had in their gardens, and feed from horses and stuff, but not, that's kind of normal things, and they weren't secured. But then the agency, overall agency, is the Fish and Wildlife Service, a federal, who managed overall grizzly bear recovery, and then Wyoming Game and Fish secondarily. But in 2021, they decided to capture her and her 4 cubs and relocate them. I don't know where they're going to relocate them. I asked them a lot of questions, but they were very transparent about it. So we never knew whether they're going to take them to Yellowstone or Montana, for that matter. I don't know. But it was in the same place in 2021 that on October 22nd, within a mile or two, that she was feeding on a carcass. So more I think about it, I think she went down there a lot looking for roadkills. And for years, I wondered why she was going south. These are the last 5 or 6 years. She was going south, and I couldn't figure out why she was leaving Teton Park and going south. I knew there was sometimes berry crops might be better. There's a lower elevation, I think. And there was an early elk hunt and a deer hunt, archery season, and also a rifle season. And that we knew that she had went down there and she found some carcasses and gut piles or whatever. But now, after some investigation, I think she probably went down on that Highway 89. It's the worst highway in all of Wyoming, basically, for speed, and it's in the canyon. There's sharp hills and rivers right there. And I think she'd probably been going down there for some years looking for roadkills, and it wasn't berries, it wasn't something else maybe. But I was pretty upset when I learned that the Fish and Wildlife Service knew about her feeding on a carcass the day before, right off the highway. So a guy that was driving down there lived in Etna, just south of there, on his way home from work in Jackson Hole. And he said he saw her she and her cub drag the elk carcass off the highway, and then reported it to Game and Fish that afternoon. And another person photographed, and a lot of people had actually photographed and watched her. So it was no secret. I didn't hear about it, but it was no secret to the Game and Fish or Fish and Wildlife Service that she was feeding on a carcass right off the road, right off this terrible highway. So I was really upset that nobody took the carcass away, which they normally do, one of the agencies, and that there was no real agency activity trying to protect her. They knew she was there. So when they trapped her, there was, in 2021, in the same area, when they tried to trap her and they got 3 cubs, there were 6 agencies: Fish and Wildlife Service, Game and Fish, Yellowstone Park, Teton Park, Sheriff's Department, Police Department, and probably 20 people and 15 cars. All, it was like a SWAT team. They were trying to capture her, and they got the 3 cubs, but not her. She went up on a hill and she waited for the cubs. And I was upset because she could have kept going over the hill and not coming back to get the 3 cubs. They're the same age as Snowy, or Spirit is. And so all that energy and basically a SWAT team went to capture her, but there was nobody there to protect her when she was on the highway. So I just don't understand, and I'll never understand, why there wasn't some kind of a force or even one person with with her lights flashing and everything. They knew she was there the night before and all that next day. And then that following day, on the 22nd, she was killed somewhere around 10:30 or so at night. But they had a lot of time to do something different. And there were no signs. There were no electronic signs, flashing signs saying beware of bear on the highway. But all they had to do was really remove the carcass, the elk carcass, and then haze her off the road and make sure that she stays off the road.
Yeah.
And then after she was killed, they didn't escort the cub Spirit or put up any signs saying the cub on the road, be careful. You know, people just really, they speed that highway. A lot of commuters, and my friend that lives down there, so we call it the Jackson 500 Speedway rush hour. So that's the kind of road this is, the highway it is. And so there's a lot of questions I have, and a lot of, I think, explanation that needs to be made about why she didn't have protection. She didn't need to be killed, in my opinion, at all. So I'm sorry to tell it to people. I'm not blaming the driver. I have no idea what anybody could hit. You know, could have hit her accidentally, and including myself over the all these years. But I'm not blaming the driver at all. I'm just blaming that there was no real protection for her, and they didn't protect Spirit afterwards either. So I don't know. Everybody asks where Spirit is. I have no idea. Nobody's seen her since, and I don't have a lot of real hope that Spirit is still out there. I sure hope he or she is, but it's first I was really devastated that she got hit, and then I'm actually more angry now than I am mourning, I guess. But here's a picture of her and the Spirit from that first year when she came out a year ago and a half or so. But anyway, I was reluctant to talk about that too much, but I did. So that's I'm sorry about that. And here she is last year with Spirit. She's a bit older, obviously. Almost the size. She was both of them were really in great shape last time I saw her in midsummer. I was really hoping that she would kick the cub out, Spirit out next summer, and then mate again and have one more round. I was very optimistic that she's in such good shape. Her teeth were still good, and her claws were still great, and her body shape and everything she was fat. So no reason she could have lived through another winter and another summer and maybe even breed and have another couple cubs.
And on that note, one of the things we should emphasize is that when Spirit was born, it made 399 the oldest known grizzly to reproduce in Greater Yellowstone. I wanted to ask you, you are a huge believer in sentience, the emotions and intelligence of non-humans in nature, as many of us are. Tell us a bit about, because you've put a lot of thought into this, of what the impact might have been on Spirit and given other similar incidents that you saw involving 399 or a cub of 399.
Well, probably the most obvious one was when 399 had a single cub about 8 or 10 years ago, who we nicknamed Snowy because the cub had a particularly white, light face. And what I realized about the sentient part was that she played a lot with Snowy, as she did with Spirit as a single cub. When she had 2 cubs or 3 cubs or 4 cubs, the cubs played together. And so I noticed how much she played with a single cub, which really is important growing up. As we know, we played with our siblings or with our friends or neighbor kids or whatever. And I think she realized that maybe it's just because she was having much fun too playing with the cub, but I think it's a kind of an innate thing that the cub needs to wrestle and interact. So she did that with both the cubs. But Snowy, one evening in June, 399 crossed the road just north of Pilgrim Creek Road in the park and got hit right at dusk by a hit and run driver. Never found who it was. And 399 went back to the highway and picked up Snowy, who was on the yellow line, picked up her and carried her about 50 yards into the woods and laid her body next to a spruce tree that was falling down. And then she went back to the highway and she ran up and down the highway like she was crazed and foaming at the mouth and bawling like a bear of balls, not, and she did that all night for 4, 5, 6 hours until the sunrise. And then the rangers decided that traffic was coming, starting to come into the park. So they went and distracted her, and went and picked up Snowy and took Snowy took Snowy away so that she would not get hit too. And then they hazed her off the road. But I'd seen her do that similar thing when they just displaced the cubs when they're feeding in tall sagebushes, and all of a sudden the cubs look up, where's mom? And they run around going nuts and bawling and stuff. And she did the same thing. They were just like lost in maybe a human shopping mall or something. Like a mother would freak out for their kids. They were all of a sudden disappeared. And after about 15 minutes, they found each other's tracks. The reason they couldn't hear, there was a big diesel truck that was parked there and making a lot of noise. So they couldn't hear each other. They're on the opposite sides of the road. So they had to go by scent. They were just doing a ring around the rosy, trying to follow the scent of each other. And they finally got together, and immediately 399 just laid down about 20 yards off the highway on her back like this. And then the cubs went under her teeth and started nursing. And she just put her big claws and arms around the cubs. And that is just like a human would do when a baby's crying. It's no different. Baby's crying. What the first thing do you do? Well, you nurse them. And it's so similar, but we just don't give animals that credit, unfortunately, for being so sentient and emotional. And they have all the emotions we have. I mean, they're having fun when they're playing, and the dogs, all you have to do is look at your dog, and when the dog is, you're playing ball with the dog is happy or whatever, and you leave the house and the dog is hang dog, as we call it, not so happy. But that's what I don't understand about why we would ever want to shoot, hunt, or kill sentient animals for fun, for trophies, for quote sport. It's not about the numbers of bears. They keep trying to say, well, we got 800 bears, 700 bears, 1,000 bears, and it doesn't matter. They're sentient, emotional beings, just like us. And why would we kill something for the hell of it, for our own fun, and then rob that experience of seeing a bear like 399 for millions of other people? Some jackass with a rifle and one bullet kills an animal like 399, or a wolf, and it doesn't matter. Wolves, cougars, bears, they're all sentient beings on down the line. And that's what frustrates me, is we've got these wildlife management things that favor trophy hunting and predator hunting, and we treat them like wolves and coyotes, like vermin in Wyoming and a lot of other states the same way. And they're not. They're sentient, emotional beings, and we should treat them better.
We've had lots of people ask about spirit. Could you also explain how far spirit was away from the home drainage? You have spoken in the past about how spirit was likely severely traumatized by watching its mother die. Some people have painted a positive prognosis that spirit might make it. You have your own thoughts on that. What are they? What do you think the odds are of spirit being able to successfully den and survive the winter?
Well, she was at the sort of not the outer limits of where they've traveled. She'd been a little bit further south, a month or so ago again. So a lot of people knew that she and spirit 399 spirit were in that area for a month, basically. But watching 399's behavior with like Snowy and losing her cubs before, and also 610 and all that. 610 was hit last year at the same time, up on Highway 89 north in the park. And we thought she was dead, and the cubs went out on the road, and they stayed right next to her most of the time for like 5 or 6 hours. So I imagine the spirit did the same thing. She probably stayed by 399's body until people came and removed her. And my guess is, watching other bears when they lose their mom or whatever, they backtrack on their trail, whatever wherever they came. So I think she would have backtracked towards Teton Park, towards her denning area, at least until she ran out of scent. And then she probably, who knows what would have happened, but she would have been probably walking on the highway. That's what's so frustrating, that there was no signs or no, they said we have signs there, but they have 2 yellow triangle jumping deer signs that we all see all the time, and nobody really pays that much attention to them. And that's the extent of the signage, where they should have really had flashing lights and saying beware, bear on the road, blah blah blah. But I think she probably backtracked her mother's trail, and but she's 75 miles from her natal den. That's a long ways. Not a big deal for 399 or 610 or other bears, but a 1.5-year-old, is not that familiar with the landscaping, that young. They needed another year or so to repeat those areas and places they went. So I'm not terribly, there's some studies where they say 1.5-year-old bears survived. Yeah, I'm sure there were, but I don't know if they survived under the same conditions on that kind of highway and at that distance, and not the protection of the park. So I hope she survived, he or she, and I hope she has a really good memory and instinct to go back to her natal den and the wilderness area by Pilgrim Creek.
Thank you for that. Let's shift gears a little bit. You are among many people who were out photographing 399 and bears in Jackson over the years. You've offered praise to a lot of different photographers and videographers who've been out there, stood side by side with you. An incredible tidal wave of imagery that went on to social media and circulated. And you're in your gallery, Images of Nature in Jackson. Tell us a bit about some of your favorite images and the memories that they bring, if you would.
Well, I think my favorite images I mentioned in the PBS Queen of the Teton 399 film, that my favorite images are the Guardian, which is behind me here, and this is one is called Among the Sage. This is the Guardian. It was so wonderful that she had such a great in the Guardian light there, and the 4 cubs are goofing around with each other, and she stood up, and everything was just really came together in that image. And this one here is pretty much right as they showed up a week or so after they showed up out of the den. And the cubs, when they're that young, they stand up a lot because everything's curious, and they're babies, They hear a noise or sound or see something, and they stand up and they walk around on two legs for a moment or two, and then go back down. And so I love this one because it's just she's sitting down. You don't see her sitting that often, and so I love just the the light and the gestures on all the bears. And the other one would be First Light, where she's the First Light, this one, where she is crossing the Snake River right at First Light on the Mount Moran, right at the First Light, exactly. Yeah, and the river is kind of snaky there, which is always a nice artistic form that we look for in a lot of paintings and things. she had a carcass. She had killed an elk a week before that and drug it into the woods on the opposite side of the river, and she was just going back to feed on the carcass. So that was a special day, and I was up there actually trying to photograph elk crossing, and my sister Sue Cedarholm was up there with me. We just saw this bear just a few days earlier dragging this elk out of the river at very, very early. It was still dark out, and then we spent 5 days photographing her and the carcass, etc. So that was really great, and everything came together, which doesn't really happen very often.
Yeah.
The other one is well, then there are ones we saw earlier with obviously with 399 and Spirit playing and things. But I've shot, I don't know, maybe over 1 million pictures of her and her families over the years, and I don't even think I've seen probably a dozen good images maybe over the years that I really think are what I would strive for. So it's a lot of time, a lot of effort, and a lot of luck.
I think one of my
What's your favorite, Todd?
Well, I think mine would be Standing Tall. It's a recent one of her with the 4 cubs. I really like this perspective of us looking over her shoulder. It's kind of allegorical in the way. It's as if we're looking into the future with the Grizzlies into grizzly conservation. Tell us about this shot.
Well, we were out in the field, and she was quite a ways away. There was a number of people out in the meadow, and she went sort of behind us, and then she got near the highway. She was going to cross, and she always looks for cars, and which is one of the more interesting things I found out early on. Like, she would go to the highway and she'd look both directions to see if there are any cars coming, and then she would cross, and sometimes she would cross with the cubs, sometimes she'd cross first and then call the cubs. And one of the funny things is, like, well, I realized that she could actually count to 4 because when she left a cub behind, she'd tell the 3 cubs to stay here. She'd go back and encourage the last cub to come with her. And I thought that was pretty cool that she didn't lose any. And she's the only bear known in Greater Yellowstone that raised all 4 quadruplets. Male or female with quadruplets survived, had them survive until sub-adulthood, and she did that with these 4, and no other bears known to do that. So I can see how difficult it would be to keep track of 4 cubs in a crazy human environment, but she was good at that. And when they were crossing the Pilgrim Creek, when it was springtime and the river was rushing, and she had to encourage them to come across the river and come to a gravel bar, and a couple of times they got swept down the river very quickly. All I could see is this little head bobbing down the stream, and she would run down as fast as she could, and she would drag it out of the stream back to the shore, and then leave the other 3 or 2 back behind, and then gather them all up. And it's amazing that I thought that it's like sometimes I think of a dog maybe in New York City, a street dog, is be able to navigate taxis and people and still make it across the crazy streets in New York or something. But that dog never had 4 cubs or 4 pups. They can do it on their own, but she could do it. So I think she's maybe way smarter than we give them credit for.
Tom, I wanted to ask you about something that happened quietly and subtly. 399 had died. There was a question of what would happen to her. Ultimately, the Park Service and the Fish and Wildlife Service decided to cremate her and spread her ashes up Pilgrim Creek. After the candlelight memorial in Jackson in the town square at which you spoke, and many people turned out, there was this sweet moment up at Pilgrim Creek that involved Dennis Vandenbos, the school teacher who had been mauled, and he pleaded that no harm come to her as he was going to receive medical attention. And indeed, Dr. Chris Servine, who was head of grizzly bear recovery, and Mary Gibson Scott, the superintendent of Grand Teton, decided not to take action against 399 and the 3 cubs. And we'll talk about her surviving cub in just a second. But how did that affect you, of that gesture by Vanden Bosch? Because you went up there that morning after the candlelight service and saw tell us what Vanden Bosch had done.
Well, he obviously was a good human being. He did the right thing. He knew that he had made a mistake by hiking early in the morning, and the 399 was feeding on a elk calf carcass that she likely killed with her 3 yearling cubs. And that's like the worst situation for a person to be in, within maybe a dozen feet or so, as he described her. And when he backed up, he saw her and the cubs feeding on the carcass, and he was just trying to back up quietly. And he was amazed at how beautiful the bear was. He talked about that a bit in the film and things. And then started backing up slowly, and he stumbled on a rock or a root or something. And when he faltered, it set her off, because she felt that he was a threat then. And he fell down, and she bit him in the shoulder, and maybe one of the cubs. He talks about one of the cubs putting a paw on his thigh and stuff. But he was so wonderful that he, on his way to the hospital, in the emergency room, he wasn't badly hurt, but mauled a bit. But he didn't blame her for it. Where a lot of people would say, "Kill that dang bear," bit me and all that, and bear should be whatever. But he had the sense to pretty much beg that it wouldn't kill her, because she didn't do anything unnatural. And Chris Ravine, who was the head of the IGBST Interagency Grizzly Bear Study Team, recommended that they leave her be, because it was a natural act. And if they killed her, that was in 2007, and we would never known her, basically, except for 1 year. And so I think he was, I really respect his wanting not to kill her, and also Chris Ravine's decision not to kill her. So thank God for that.
And what did Vanden Bosch do up near Pilgrim Creek? That's the gesture that.
Todd, I can't remember what. I'm not following for sure. Tell me what you're thinking.
I think he laid out flowers in her honor up there. He returned.
Actually,
yeah.
Well, he may have. I didn't see him particularly, but there was another gentleman, pretty much late 70s, my age, whatever. And I went up there just to kind of reflect on 399, and they had spread her ashes. They decided to cremate her instead of stuff her and mount her and have her as a showpiece someplace, which I think would have not honored her well. I'm glad they spread her ashes up Pilgrim Creek. But anyway, that next day after the vigil, he was at the vigil. I remember seeing him, and I saw this guy laying roses on the side rails of the Pilgrim Creek Bridge on both sides. Must about 3 dozen roses, I think. And I walked up to him and asked him if I could take a picture of him with his roses and what he was doing, and a little video. And he started crying. The guy was crying, weeping. And he said, "Yeah," and he's older man, mature man, and he just started crying. It broke my heart. And then pretty soon a woman came up and she was crying, and then pretty soon there was a dozen people there. They saw the cars and the roses and us talking, and everybody had tears in their eyes. And I've seen that so much over the years, not just when she died, but even when she was alive. And they just break out in tears, tears of joy in that case. This is tears of sorrow, unfortunately. But I thought that was such a really interesting act, laying roses on Pilgrim Creek Bridge. It was beautiful, and the guy was beautiful, and as were the others. So it was a really heartwarming thing.
So in the wake of the Vanden Bosch incident back in 2007, there's only one surviving cub from the original triplet group, and that's a daughter, 610, who has had several litters of cubs herself. Many people have asked about what's going on with her. Could you give us an update? Again, the oldest surviving offspring of 399, and what's up with her these days?
Well, last year in October, she was hit on the same highway, but it's Highway 8926, going east out of Moran towards DuBois. And that's another same highway, basically, but another real difficult, challenging highway for animals. A lot of them get hit there. And she got hit apparently by a truck or semi or dually wheeled. The skid marks were about, I don't know, 150 feet long. And I heard about it, and I was here at the gallery, and I decided this is 399 was their first 3 cubs. And my first picture I printed in 2007. They were yearlings here, and one of these is 610. And anyway, she got hit last year in October and was laying about 20 yards off the highway. And when I first saw her, I thought she was really mortally wounded. She was hardly moving, and she laid there for some hours. And the cubs at one point came out on the highway when I was trying to go back and forth and just see what her condition was. And there was only one brigadier there managing her and the 3 yearlings, which I felt was not enough. Obviously, it was on a curve. That's where she got hit, on a curve. And at first there was bear biologist Schwabedison and another ranger and a couple of other people, but they all kind of left it with just one guy, Tyler Bresington. And I felt badly that the 3 cubs might also get hit, and I thought maybe they should put people at both ends to slow down traffic. But I got a citation for going too slow, for obstructing traffic, which is kind of crazy, but people need to go slow when there's a dying or dead bear and there's 3 cubs running on the road. But I couldn't convince the ranger of that. But anyway, she survived that. I think she was just traumatized, probably had a concussion or something, because she looked dead to me at one point. And she finally got up as soon as it got dark, and the rangers got closer, and she got up and walked across the highway with her 3 cubs, and then she survived. They survived until to Denning in the summertime. She kicked them out, and now she's doing fine. I saw her maybe 6 weeks ago. She looks good. So maybe she met up with Bruner or one of those lovers that both 399 she had, and maybe she'll come out with cubs next year, I hope.
So that there is the possibility that she could wander out. Does she live in Pilgrim Creek? Do you think that's what could happen, that she would wander out just as her mother did?
Well, there's that possibility. One of her cubs, one of her siblings, I should say, in that picture of the 3 of them, was killed by a deer hunter just outside the park when she was about 6. It was a female. And 610 has 3 cubs that next year, or 2 cubs, I can't remember now. But her sibling that got killed by the deer hunter might have had cubs that year too, so that one was gone. And then the other sibling, the male, was in a neighborhood where 399 went early in the spring to eat bluegrass every year. And most of the people in the compound loved seeing her as a sign of spring. But there was a guy from back east, and he didn't like living with bears. He'd walk around the compound with his shotgun and his pistol, and he finally called the game fish, and they relocated that bear twice, and eventually that bear got into cattle down south, and then the game fish euthanized him for killing a cow. So, but 610 is the likely heir to 399's queendom, and hopefully. So glad she didn't get killed last year, because they both could have been gone very easily.
So
this
right
is
now,
This is 6:10
Yeah.
the day before. She got hit on the highway crossing the Snake River.
Beautiful
With her 3
photograph.
cubs. Thank you.
So Tom, typically this time of the year, bears are headed toward their den or getting ready to go to the den. And this year for grizzlies that make it to the den and go into their slumber, when they wake up in 2025, it's going to be, or potentially it could be a very different world. There is a lot of talk, given the way the elections went, that grizzly bear delisting could be fast-tracked, possibly this winter. And that would set the stage for management being handed over to the states. What do you think about that? What do you think is coming down the pike?
Well, they've been delisted a couple of times. Last time in 2017, and at the last minute, literally the last minute, the day before the hunt was going to start, the judge ruled against delisting and put him back on endangered species list. And there's been, they just keep going after, wanting to game and fish, want to have them as a hunted species. And obviously 399 and bears like her, 610 now, wander out of the park, we know, and they would be the first ones to get shot. Again, one bullet, one guy, maybe 2 guys and 2 bullets, whatever. So it's a sad commentary on our wildlife management in America. It's not just Wyoming, it's Idaho and Montana also want to delist the grizzly bears. I think Idaho was maybe rejected. But regardless, there's this constant appeal to turn over the management to the states, grizzly bear management to the states, get them off the endangered species list. But a few years ago or less, they did that with wolves and took them off the endangered species list and turned it over to the states, and the states basically slaughtered a lot of wolves for for the hell of it. And unfortunately, like, a lot of people heard about the wolf that got run over by a snow machine. The guy took it in, it was crippled, and taped his mouth shut and took it into the bar to show it off, take pictures, and then killed it. And that is still legal in Wyoming, but you can't take it to the bar anymore. You just have to kill it as soon after you run it over a few times. If it's still alive, you've got to put it out of its misery. So we have really crappy laws, and really beyond crappy, of really sentient animals like bears and wolves, coyotes, whatever you name it, cougars. And we shoot cougars for sport, for fun, and leave the kittens in the den waiting for mom to come home, and she doesn't come home, and they starve to death in the den. And I've had a number of people tell me that's just collateral damage. Just like, you can kill the mother and leave the cubs in the den to starve to death. That's just tough crap, basically. And when I hear collateral damage, I think, gee, that's pretty unethical and cruel and inhumane, and you name it, immoral. So we do it to a lot of species, but we really need to change the paradigm of game management in the U.S. We've got our governor, legislator, game commission, fish and game. They all want to take them off the endangered species list of bears, but they've already taken off the wolves, and look what they've done, and they don't have any protection for kittens, the cougars. And we have to quit giving so much latitude to hunters. I grew up hunting and fishing, and I used to love to hunt, mostly birds, which is in Nebraska. I understand hunting and how much fun it can be and stuff. We never shot mammals, basically, short of a few cottontails when I was young. But I think we need to change. We need to change and really respect these sentient beings that really do have all kinds of emotions that we have. We just need to change it. It's crappy, and it's cruel, and it's inhumane.
I wanted to ask you, you are dear friends with Jane Goodall, and Jane Goodall had taken a keen interest in 399 and all the bears of Greater Yellowstone. What was your interaction like with her after she heard the news about 399?
Well, she was devastated too because she had spoken for 399, both in a lot of different films and stuff. We went to DC to speak about. You can speak about that when I finish here, but she has recorded a number of pieces speaking out for grizzlies and 399 and other animals. Of course, she's really the queen of conservation in the world, and has taught me a lot about animal sentience and intelligence. She said when she was a child, she said, I learned from my pet dog Rusty all I needed to know about animal behavior in a sense. But that's what she said, and she still says that. That they're sentient, that they have fun, and they enjoy things, and they feel pain, and they feel suffering, and they feel loss, or everything that we do. And that's what she was talking about with her dog Rusty. And because of that, I named my latest dog Rusty. She said I could call it Rusty 2, but not Rusty 1. So, but she has taught me so much about animal behavior and the sentience and emotional beings that they are, and she's talking about even octopus and animals like that where you never consider having some kind of a brain or intelligence or whatever. We all know that now, but a lot of people don't necessarily see the same or watch the same things that she and I might. But you remember what the response was? We went to Washington to talk about 399 when they were trying to delist them in 2017, I think it was.
Yes, you and I, Congressman Grijalva of Arizona, who then was in charge or overseeing House resources on the minority side, invited us out. I was a journalist moderating a panel that was with you and with a couple of others speaking on wolves. And the response to 399 was incredible. I think what was impactful was one of our books was positioned on the waiting room table at the Interior Department for both a Democratic Interior Secretary and a Republican Interior Secretary. And if I remember correctly, Jason Chavez of Utah, the Republican, was a big fan of your photography and wanted to come out to Grand Teton National Park and photograph 399 with you, which is pretty telling.
He did, yeah, he did, and we did see her at a distance, and he was just thrilled.
Yeah. Hey, Tom, since 399 passed and with the change of administration, many people have reached out to you and asked what they can do. There is this upwelling of goodwill from lots of people. They not only want to honor 399's legacy, but because of 399, they've become advocates for grizzly bears, young and old. What are you telling people? What can they do?
Well, I've never seen such an outpouring of concern for the loss of 399, and it's the mail, emails, texts, just so many people are really hurting about her loss, and they want to know what to do. We're forming we have a little committee now. For a lot of people want to have a memorial bronze statue, which we're working on. Probably be bigger than life size as she was, and so we're going to do at least one, maybe two big bronzes of her cubs, and maybe hopefully the Guardian would be the model, I think. But we're still forming that, and if to places to go to, I would say first, if anybody wants to donate money, the people who really saved 399, got them back on the endangered species list, was Earth Justice and their attorneys, which they have a lot of attorneys, great organization and big fighters, and they have powerful, legal, real powerful legal department.
And
So
their email is, or their URL is earthjustice.org.
Right. And then there's your Yellowstonian.org, which I think would give people a lot of, keep information flowing. Vital Ground, who I was on a board a while back, they conserve a lot of grizzly bear land. They're interested in buying land, sort of like the Nature Conservancy for unused sort of bear habitat, or protecting bears and that getting more habitat for bears. So vitalground.org is good. And I would say Louisa Wilcox and Dave Matson.
Grizzly Times.
GrizzlyTimes.org. They are really amazing. And Dave is used to be on the IGBST team for years and years and studied both cougars and grizzly bears. And he's a wealth of knowledge. He's retired now, but he and Louisa put out these newsletters, Grizzly Times, which are really informative about what's going on legally with the bears and everything else. And they'll talk about, the populations and really giving you solid scientific evidence that the population is not blowing up like a lot of people would like you to believe, like the Fish and Wildlife Service, the Game and Fish might. It's basically the trend, as Dave says, is basically flat. It goes up a little bit one year, down a little bit another year, but for the last 15 years, the trend is either flat or going down, according to Dave. And he said it's easier now for them to count, obviously, because whitebark pine trees have been decimated by whitebark pine beetles, and it's easier to see bears. They changed their methods of counting bears populations. They doubled their efforts or tripled their efforts, so of course they're going to see more. Now a lot of bears that were going into the whitebark pine forest for pine nuts are now going to high elevation rocky slopes for cutworm moss, and they're easy to see. There's nothing there except rocks. So it's not they're not comparing apples and apples all the time. I'm saying the Fish and Wildlife Service, the Game and Fish, and so I trust Matson's scientific data, and so I think that's a good place. We are put up an email maybe at the end here. When we get everything sorted out, we want to make sure we honor 399 rightly and correctly. And we will get back to people who are interested in either donating or to just let them know what's happening with the memorial. We'll have a plaque, and what plaques with her story on them and things. But the thing is Mangelsen Conservation Fund, and it'll be dedicated for 399 at the time anyway, and we'll put that up on at the end of the thing here. We're also doing it.
I think the email address is conservation@mangelsen.com. And this commemorative calendar, you are generously going to steer a lot of the proceeds toward conservation organizations and conservation journalism. I appreciate that, with Yellowstonian.org, of trying to educate the public and use the law as a defense for grizzly bears. Is that right?
That's right. All the net proceeds will go to grizzly bear conservation, and if we need to add it to the memorial fund for 399 for bronzes and things, we'll do that too. But whatever, we're going to donate it to protecting grizzlies.
Well, we're coming to the end here. This was the inaugural Mangelsen Live event. It's unfortunate we had planned this to do something a long while ago, and then the unfortunate event happened with 399. I think the silver lining, if there is one, is of a lot of people have come together rallying around conservation and bears. And what are your thoughts of these times we live in and how important it is for people of any means, no matter what they are, to lend their voice or open their wallet. How important is that today?
I think with the recent election, it is more important today than ever. We have an administration that doesn't believe in climate change, which is probably the worst threat we have facing the world. And I know the representatives and senators, governor in Wyoming is all for delisting bears and killing wolves with snow machines is okay. That's wrong-headed. We should be celebrating Wyoming for being the home of 399 and wolves that were reintroduced into Yellowstone, and really a lot of great things that happen in Wyoming, but yet they're being ignored kind of. And it's about coal and gas and drill baby drill, as Donald Trump said, drill baby drill. We kind of need to get over that. We need to spend more time and energy and money on renewable resources. But I think we need to do more now than we did before. We can't get discouraged. No, I'm sorry if I didn't have a lot of good news, because we were going to do this when we thought 399 was still alive, and I thought she'd be in the den by now. She's gone in the den as early as November 7th and as late as this January 2nd. So she has a widespread of going into the den, but I was hoping to see her go in the den this year. Not what happened, obviously, but it did happen, and it didn't have to, basically. But anyway, I really appreciate everybody's on here, and I would encourage you to seriously speak out for bears and wolves and cougars and all wildlife.
Well, it's great as always coming together for a chat. And before we go, I just want to say it's been a great delight to meet so many of you bear advocates who have been out there. This is a remarkable ecosystem that we have. And I want to give Tom the last word on something. Tom, so many times we've been out together and you had those bumper stickers made that said, "I saw 399," and you handed them out to school kids who would reach out to you a decade later of having remembered that. They grew up, became young adults. On an uplifting note, just offer a little bit to people of the impact that 399 had and the memories that she created that you think impacted them.
Well, the stickers are one thing, and the kids loved it, and they put them on their lunchbox or whatever, give it to Dad to put on his bumper. But I think the most memorable story I have with kids was about 7 or 8 years ago when I was just south of Pilgrim Creek, and I was watching 399, the Cubs. They were about 400 yards out, and I had my scope set up and things. And there was a small bear jam with 50 people, and now there might be 1,000 today, or used to be, won't be anymore. But these three van loads of kids, I put them in the range of 9 to 12-year-olds, piled out of their three vans. And one kid ran up to me and he said, "Are you Mr. Mangelsen?" And I said, "Yeah, I am." And he says, "I thought I'd find you here on the road." So he must have been following me a bit, thinking I was on the road all the time, which I pretty much was. And he said, "I have your book." He said, "Would you mind signing it for me? I brought it." I said, "Oh, no." And so he ran, got the book, and the kids were all wanting to look through the scope and binoculars. There's some friends that had scopes, and asked them if they could share them with the kids and stuff. And the teacher, one of the teachers came up to me and she says, "You know, Tom, we've been to Mount Rushmore, we've been to Glacier Park, we've been to Yellowstone Park, and now we're here and we're on our way home." And she said, "These kids, we never saw a bear until 399 and these two. And all of our travels." And she said, "You know, these kids will remember this day and this sighting for the rest of their lives. They may be the only bears that they ever see. Growing up in Nebraska, I could really relate to that. I didn't see a grizzly bear until 1975 on my way to Alaska in Jasper Park. But I was just thinking that these kids, and I said, where are you from? She said, Olathe, Kansas. I don't know where Olathe, Kansas is. In the eastern, you're not too far from Kansas City, I found out later. When she said that, these kids will remember this moment for the rest of their lives and may not get another chance. That just somehow hit me so hard that if we don't protect these bears and we don't keep them on the endangered species list and really protect them, those opportunities for kids will never happen. So I'll leave it with that and think about all our young and our generations and their generations to come hopefully can see grizzly bears in the wild forever.
Thank you for that word, and everybody watching tonight, whether live or recorded, they all matter. Every voice matters. And we hope you all will stay in touch with us. A great way to reach Tom is through Mangelsen.com. You can reach me through Yellowstonian.org. And I look forward to the good conservation that you do, my friend.
I look forward to seeing you soon, Todd. We need to get together and go on a road trip.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Todd. Really appreciate it. And thanks everybody for joining us.
Thank you.
And,
good night.
Really appreciate it. Good night.
Rainy days don't seem so wet. Stormy nights don't stay. From the moment that we met, you were worth the wait. Oh, this could be the best thing that I'll ever know. Talk for hours, I never slept. Two silhouettes on the concrete steps. We watched the sun as it slowly crept from the horizon to the place we met. Oh, this could be the best thing that I'll ever know.